We're not on a boat. We're not on a raft. We're not even on a paddleboard or a surfboard, but it's like I got washboard abs right now on a giant can, a giant can. I'm just out here sitting on the can. Got a spear with me because it's like the only thing that I've made that is completely waterproof. Everything from tip to tail is completely natural. I just like to take something homemade with me, basically, if I'm sort of saying. Actually, a really floatable reason is just the idea of having sort of a comfort blanket. And I have no problem saying that to anybody who asks me why I have such a thing. Something that's homemade that has a lot of uses. And if you perceive it to be used for one thing, then I would just say you probably have tunnel vision. Because that's obviously not the case. So all I'd have to do is probably just either dig a deep enough hole, jump high enough, or step out of the way. Or maybe if I could go forward fast enough, I'd just go right through everything. But really, that's sort of the idea, at least. Just to have something that has the ability to change, really. Because obviously, the entirety of the whole thing I can take apart. And basically make into a variety of things. And the more that it's something that has come from your own hands, the more true that that is, the more that it has the ability to change without question. So then you can almost even just spin that even more and just whoever it is that would be questioning you is to say like, wow, you really must believe in me. And at that point in time, you could probably say something along the lines or the effects of, do you think that this is the best place that I could be? Which should open up the conversation to there being something to the effect of, if anybody has some destination, then there's obviously something to talk about with why they're here and not there. And if somebody seems like they're going nowhere, then it's obvious that they're here, so there's something to it, basically. And obviously, the change that this can most directly turn into in a setting like this, especially, is probably just a sign of something. Like, if you want to know probably the most literal interpretation that I could do with it, according to what it is a sign. But it's also fun to play with because it's crafted in such a way that it actually can create some interesting sounds on its own. Just like the idea of there being something sound, really, to like grab onto, that can basically just represent all those ideas that I just spoke of. And obviously, it's like, if you really wanted to, then its actual use could be basically something really universal without question. But see, then it's just like the whole idea of, if somebody has basically sort of courage is sort of a currency as well. And it's just like the idea that you can hand over something to somebody, and it's like you have something that you know is basically just like this idea that is current as soon as the object has basically been used, I guess, to some degree. Now, obviously, that takes on multiple degrees in terms of how you interpret that, according to the landscape and every other metaphor present. And sort of how much of a kid you want to be, really, basically. I mean, I think you can probably reach the ultimatum of being a kid anywhere, which might be like the fairest thing. But I think that obviously it's sort of like the idea of no going back, which is just like, once you're a kid, it's like no going back. But once you step into that zone to try to reach that point again, it's like no going back. So that's kind of like a turning point right there for that. So there's a fish. Just jumped right there. But that's basically the most practical amount of change. Obviously, there's like plenty of small things that I could basically use. There's a texture that's present, and obviously it's like I have the ability to create designs on that texture, which can just multiply basically all of that. And all of this has been basically interpreted from another grip somewhere else. So anyways, I just grabbed this before coming out here because it was obviously something that could just almost be tossed into here. Now, see, then it represents a real sign, because it's like you're playing with the idea of things having causality at that point. But the thing itself should be fine. See, now there's sort of like a direct contradiction. But the entirety of the whole thing is structurally sound enough, according to this environment, that that statement should be true. But obviously, then that statement comes up against the other end of everything that I just said, in terms of then you're sort of giving up that idea to everybody else, and sort of your worst self, which is basically somebody else. So anyways, I don't want to hold my phone out here too much. Hit sort of a 10-minute mark, said some cool stuff, I guess. Feels pretty nice though. Anybody has the opportunity to do something like this, I definitely say yeah. I mean, just whatever floats your boat. In this case, more than anything, it feels like my tail's in the water. All right, later, whoever you are. I can see there was 2 people watching at one time. Oh, there's 1 person. All right, later.